Welcome back to author Sloan Werewolf channel, my beautiful pack. I'm absolutely thrilled you're here because tonight, I have something incredibly special for you, a story that's going to grab you by the heart and refuse to let go. Have you ever locked eyes with someone and felt your entire world shift? That moment when recognition hits like lightning, but the person staring back at you is supposed to be your enemy? That's exactly what happens to Luna Hartwell when she meets a dangerously attractive stranger in a Seattle coffee shop, a man whose silver eyes haunt her dreams and whose very presence awakens something wild inside her. But here's the twist, darlings, Luna doesn't know she's a werewolf. She has no idea she's the last of a legendary bloodline that could unite every pack on the West Coast, or destroy them all. And the devastatingly alpha male who's just claimed her as his fated mate? He's been hunting her for 15 years, bound by an ancient promise that could either save her life or end it. Over the next minutes, you're going to witness Luna's complete transformation from human journalist to moon-touched alpha, experience the electric tension of enemies becoming fated mates, and watch as a centuries-old conspiracy threatens to tear apart everything they're fighting to protect. We've got instant recognition, forbidden attraction, awakening powers, pack politics, and a love story so intense it literally rewrites the supernatural laws. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and prepare for a journey that will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about destiny, power, and what it truly means to find your other half. Trust me, you're going to want to stay until the very end for this one. Let's begin with Chapter 1 of Fated to Alpha Enemy, where one look changes everything, and nothing will ever be the same. Chapter 1. The coffee shop's bell chimed as Luna Hartwell pushed through the glass door, her journalism degree burning a hole in her messenger bag alongside 3 rejection letters from major newspapers. Rain droplets clung to her auburn hair, and she brushed them away with fingers that trembled, not from cold, but from the strange electricity that had been crackling under her skin for weeks. Double-shot espresso, extra strong, she told the barista, her voice carrying the exhaustion of another sleepless night filled with vivid dreams of silver eyes and howling winds. Dreams that felt more like memories than fantasies. The coffee shop buzzed with Seattle's typical morning energy, tech workers hunched over laptops, students buried in textbooks, and business professionals checking phones between sips of overpriced lattes. Luna found her usual corner table and pulled out her laptop, determined to finish the investigative piece that would finally prove her worth to the Seattle Times. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard as she opened the document titled Strange Disappearances in the Olympic Peninsula. For 3 months, she'd been tracking a pattern of missing persons cases that local authorities dismissed as hiking accidents or voluntary departures. But Luna saw connections others missed. All the disappeared were young, healthy individuals who'd been camping or hiking alone near the same remote forest area. The same forest where her parents had died in that car accident 15 years ago. Luna's phone buzzed. Another text from her best friend Sarah. Stop investigating those weird forest cases. It's giving me bad vibes. Come to my gallery opening instead? She was about to respond when the coffee shop's atmosphere shifted. The cheerful chatter dimmed to a low murmur, and Luna felt the hair on her arms stand up as if lightning was about to strike. A scent hit her. Pine forests after rain, wild sage, and something indefinably masculine that made her pulse quicken. Without looking up from her laptop, she knew someone was watching her. Luna lifted her gaze and her world tilted off its axis. A man stood near the entrance, and he was staring directly at her with eyes the color of molten silver, the same eyes from her dreams. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore a charcoal business suit that did nothing to hide the predatory grace in his movements. His dark hair was styled perfectly, but something wild lurked beneath that civilized exterior. Recognition slammed into her with the force of a freight train. Not the kind of recognition that comes from meeting someone before, but something deeper, more primal. Something that whispered mine in a voice she didn't recognize as her own. Their eyes locked across the crowded coffee shop, and Luna gasped as heat flooded her system. Her laptop screen flickered, and the lights overhead seemed to brighten for a moment before returning to normal. Around them, conversations resumed as if nothing had happened, but Luna felt as though the earth had shifted beneath her feet. The man's nostrils flared slightly, and his hands clenched at his sides. Even from across the room, she could see the tension coiling in his powerful frame. His lips parted, and she swore she heard a low growl that made her skin tingle with awareness. Then his expression hardened into something cold and furious. He strode toward her table with purposeful steps, and other patrons seemed to instinctively move out of his way. Luna's heart hammered against her ribs, and she gripped her coffee cup so tightly she was surprised it didn't shatter. Luna Hartwell. His voice was a low rumble that vibrated through her bones. It wasn't a question. Do I know you? The words came out breathless, though she already knew the answer would change everything. You're investigating disappearances in the Olympic Peninsula. Again, not a question. His silver eyes seemed to see straight through her, and she had the unsettling feeling that he knew exactly what she'd been dreaming about. Who's asking? Luna forced steel into her voice, though her journalistic instincts were screaming that this man was dangerous in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Someone who knows you're digging into things that could get you killed. He leaned forward, placing his hands flat on her small table. The wood creaked under the pressure. Stop the investigation. Find another story. Excuse me? Luna shot to her feet, anger overriding the strange pull she felt toward this stranger. You don't get to waltz in here and tell me what to write about. I don't care who you think you are. His eyes flashed with something that looked almost like approval before the coldness returned. I know exactly who I am. The question is whether you know who you are, little journalist. My name is Luna, not little journalist, and I'm not stopping my investigation because some suit with control issues doesn't like it. She crossed her arms, matching his glare despite the fact that he towered over her 5'6" frame. Luna. The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. Do you know what your name means? It means moon. What does that have to do with anything? His smile held no warmth. Everything. Especially when the full moon is 3 days away. Before she could process what that cryptic statement meant, he straightened and pulled a business card from his jacket pocket. His fingers brushed hers as he handed it to her, and the contact sent electric shocks up her arm. From the way his jaw tightened, he felt it too. When you decide to stop playing with fire, call me. His voice had gone rough around the edges. Before something finds you, that's much more dangerous than a few missing hikers. Luna looked down at the card. In elegant script, it read Dominic Blackthorne, CEO, Blackthorne Security Solutions. Below that was a phone number and an address in one of Seattle's most expensive districts. When she looked up, he was already walking away. She watched him leave, noting how his movements held a fluid grace that reminded her of a predator. At the door, he turned back, and their eyes met once more across the crowded coffee shop. 3 days, Luna. Remember that. Then he was gone, leaving her standing beside her table with a business card that felt warm to the touch and a dozen new questions burning in her mind. Luna sank back into her chair, her hands shaking as she opened her laptop again. But instead of her investigation notes, she found herself typing Dominic Blackthorne Seattle into a search engine. The results made her blood run cold. Blackthorne Security Solutions was one of the largest private security firms on the West Coast, with contracts ranging from corporate protection to government consultation. But it was Dominic's photo on the company's About page that made her breath catch. The professional headshot showed the same devastating man who'd just confronted her, but there was something in his eyes, a wildness that the photographer had failed to completely capture. More disturbing were the news articles that popped up when she dug deeper. Dominic Blackthorne was known for taking cases that traditional law enforcement couldn't or wouldn't handle. Missing persons in remote areas. Animal attacks that left no trace of the predators. Unexplained phenomena that authorities dismissed but private clients paid millions to investigate. And according to every article, he had a 100% success rate. Luna's phone rang, startling her from her research. The caller ID showed her editor's name. Marcus? What's up? Luna, I need you to come in. Now. Marcus Chen's voice was tight with tension. We just got a call about another disappearance in the Olympic Peninsula. Young woman, early 20s, went missing 3 nights ago while camping alone. Luna's stomach dropped. Where exactly? Same area you've been tracking. Pack your bags, kid. You're going out there tomorrow to cover the search and rescue operation. Marcus, I don't think that's a good idea. Something's not right about those woods. Since when do you turn down a story? This could be your big break, Luna. The family's offering exclusive access in exchange for sensitive coverage. Luna looked down at Dominic's business card, remembering his warning about the full moon being 3 days away. Tomorrow would make it 2 days. I'll be there, she heard herself saying, though every instinct screamed against it. After hanging up, she stared at her laptop screen, at all the research about Dominic Blackthorne and his mysterious company. Then she looked at her own investigation files, at the pattern of disappearances that had been haunting her for months. Whatever was happening in those woods, it was connected to her in ways she didn't understand yet. And somehow, the dangerous stranger who'd just turned her world upside down was part of it too. Luna closed her laptop and gathered her things, the strange electricity under her skin growing stronger with each passing moment. As she left the coffee shop, she couldn't shake the feeling that invisible eyes were watching her every move. 3 days until the full moon. 2 days until she walked into the very forest where her parents had died and people continued to disappear. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice that didn't sound quite like her own whispered that she was finally going home. Chapter 2. The nightmare woke Luna at 3:17 a.m., her sheets soaked with sweat and her heart thundering like a war drum. This time, the dream had been different. Instead of running through moonlit forests, she'd been standing in a clearing while wolves circled her, not with menace, but with something that felt like reverence. Their eyes gleamed silver in the darkness, and at their head stood a massive black wolf whose gaze burned with familiar intelligence. She'd awakened the moment before the wolf began to shift into human form. Luna stumbled to her bathroom, splashing cold water on her face while trying to banish the lingering images. In the mirror, her reflection looked pale and drawn, but her green eyes held flecks of gold that hadn't been there yesterday. She blinked hard, certain she was imagining things, but the golden specks remained. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, change of plans. The family wants you there today. Helicopter leaves in 4 hours. Don't screw this up. 4 hours. That meant she'd be in the Olympic Peninsula by afternoon, a full day earlier than expected, with 2 days until the full moon instead of 1. Luna grabbed a duffel bag and started packing, her movements jerky with nervous energy. Hiking boots, weather-appropriate clothing, recording equipment, notebook, camera. As she reached for her laptop charger, her fingers brushed against Dominic's business card where she'd left it on her nightstand. The cardstock was warm under her fingertips, and for a moment she swore she could smell that intoxicating scent of pine and sage. Before she could second-guess herself, she grabbed her phone and dialed the number. It rang once before his voice filled her ear, rough with sleep but alert. Blackthorn. It's Luna Hartwell. She kept her tone professional despite the way her pulse spiked at the sound of his voice. We met yesterday. I know who you are. There was movement in the background, rustling fabric that suggested he was getting out of bed. The thought sent heat flooding through her cheeks. It's 3 in the morning. They're sending me to the peninsula today. Earlier than planned. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken tension. When Dominic finally spoke, his voice held a dangerous edge. Where exactly? Base camp near Lake Cushman. The missing woman was last seen on the Hurricane Ridge Trail. Christ. The curse exploded from him with enough force to make her flinch. Luna, listen to me very carefully. Do not go into those woods alone. Do not stray from populated areas. And whatever you do, don't go anywhere after sunset. You're scaring me, she admitted, sinking onto her bed as her knees went weak. Good. You should be scared. His voice gentled slightly, taking on an almost protective tone that made her chest tighten. The peninsula isn't safe for someone like you. Someone like me? What's that supposed to mean? Another pause, longer this time. She heard what sounded like pacing footsteps and a low, frustrated growl. It means you're walking into territory that belongs to things you don't understand yet. Things that will know exactly what you are the moment you cross into their domain. What am I, Dominic? The question slipped out before she could stop it, voiced aloud for the first time the fear that had been growing inside her for weeks. That's not a conversation for the phone. His voice dropped to an intimate rumble that sent shivers down her spine despite her fear. Where are you staying? The ranger station has cabins for press. I'll be in. No. You'll stay at the Timber Creek Lodge. I'll have a room reserved for you under my company name. It's safer there. Safer from what? From the things that hunt when the moon is full. The line went dead, leaving Luna staring at her phone with more questions than answers. But something in his tone made the decision for her. She called Marcus and lied smoothly about the press cabin being overbooked, accepting the inevitable lecture about expense accounts in exchange for a night at what she hoped would be safety. 3 hours later, Luna was airborne in a helicopter that cut through morning mist toward the towering peaks of the Olympic Mountains. Below them, ancient forests spread in every direction, thousands of acres of wilderness where a person could disappear without a trace. The pilot, a weathered man named Jake, had to shout over the rotor noise. Pretty country, but I wouldn't want to be caught out there alone. Strange things happen in these woods. Strange how? Luna adjusted her headset, leaning forward. Animals acting weird. Hikers reporting sounds that don't match any wildlife they know. And the number of people who just vanish. Jake's expression grew troubled. I've been flying search and rescue for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like what's been happening lately. The disappearances started about 6 months ago, right? Give or take. But it's not just people going missing. It's how they disappear. No trace, no trail, no signs of struggle. Like they just walked into thin air. Or were taken by something that left no human tracks, Luna thought with a chill. The helicopter set down in a clearing near Lake Cushman, where base camp bustled with search and rescue volunteers, Forest Service personnel, and family members of the missing woman. Luna spotted the TV news crews immediately. Her competition had arrived before her, already interviewing the distraught parents. She grabbed her equipment and headed toward the command tent, but froze when she caught sight of a familiar figure standing apart from the crowd. Dominic Blackthorne wore tactical gear instead of his business suit, but there was no mistaking that commanding presence or those silver eyes that found her immediately across the chaos. Their gazes locked, and Luna felt that same electric jolt from yesterday, stronger now in the wild setting. He began walking toward her with that predatory grace, and she noticed that people instinctively moved out of his path without seeming to realize they were doing it. "You came," she said when he reached her, hating how breathless she sounded. "Did you think I wouldn't?" His eyes swept over her, taking in her hiking gear with apparent approval. "You look like you actually know how to handle yourself outdoors." "I spent summers camping with my parents before." She trailed off, realizing she'd never told him about her parents' accident. "Before they died in these woods." Dominic's voice held no surprise, only a grim acknowledgement that sent ice through her veins. "How did you know that?" "The same way I knew your name yesterday." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell that intoxicating scent that clung to him. "The same way I know you've been having dreams about wolves and silver eyes." Luna's heart stopped. "That's impossible. I never told anyone about the dreams." "You didn't have to tell me." His hand rose as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side with obvious effort. "Luna, what do you remember about the night your parents died?" "Nothing useful. I was 7, asleep in the back seat when we crashed. By the time I woke up in the hospital, they were already gone." "And you've been having nightmares ever since?" "Not nightmares." The correction came automatically. "Dreams. Beautiful, terrifying dreams about running through forests and feeling free." She shook her head, frustrated by her inability to explain the sensation. "It sounds crazy." "It's not crazy." Dominic's voice held a gentleness that made her chest ache. "It's awakening." Before she could ask what he meant, a commotion erupted near the command tent. A searcher had emerged from the treeline, carrying something that made the waiting families surge forward with desperate hope. It was a backpack, bright purple with reflective strips that matched the description of the missing woman's gear. But the fabric was shredded as if by massive claws, and dark stains covered the synthetic material. Luna watched the parents collapse in each other's arms as hope died in their faces. She fumbled for her camera, journalism training taking over despite her churning stomach, but Dominic's hand closed over hers. "Don't." His grip was firm but gentle. "This isn't for public consumption. It's news. People have a right to know what's happening out there. People have a right to live. Publishing photos of that backpack will only cause panic and bring more amateur hunters into these woods." His thumb brushed over her knuckles, sending warmth up her arm. "Trust me on this." Luna wanted to argue, to insist on her professional obligations, but something in his expression stopped her. This wasn't about controlling the story, it was about protecting people from something they didn't understand. "What attacked her?" she asked quietly. "Nothing natural." His jaw clenched, and she could see the tension coiling in his powerful frame. "Luna, I need you to promise me something. Whatever happens over the next 2 days, whatever you see or hear or feel, don't go into the woods alone. Especially not after dark. The search teams will be working around the clock. I have to follow the story. Then stay with the largest groups. Stay near the lights and the radios. And if you feel anything at all, that makes your skin crawl or your instincts scream, you run. You don't investigate, you don't try to get a closer look, you run straight back to civilization." Luna studied his face, noting the genuine fear lurking behind his controlled facade. "You're not just talking about ordinary predators, are you?" "No. I'm not." The wind shifted, carrying new scents from the forest, damp earth, decaying leaves, and something else that made the hair on Luna's arms stand up. A low howl echoed from the distant mountains, long and mournful, followed by answering calls that seemed to come from all directions. Around the camp, conversations died as everyone turned toward the tree line. The howling continued for several minutes, a wild chorus that spoke of ancient wildness and barely controlled hunger. When silence finally returned, Luna realized she was pressed against Dominic's side, his arm curved protectively around her shoulders. The contact felt natural, right in a way that should have terrified her but instead brought comfort. "What was that?" someone whispered. "Wolves," said the search and rescue coordinator, but his voice lacked conviction. "Probably warning others away from their territory." Dominic's arm tightened around Luna. "That wasn't a warning," he said quietly, too low for anyone else to hear. "That was a summons." Chapter 3. Luna spent the afternoon following search teams along established trails, documenting their methodical grid patterns and interviewing volunteers about the missing woman, Jessica Chen, a 23-year-old graduate student who'd been researching owl migration patterns when she vanished. The story that emerged painted a picture of a careful, experienced hiker who knew these mountains well, which made her disappearance even more unsettling. As the sun began its descent toward the tree line, Luna found herself back at base camp, transcribing interviews while keeping one eye on the forest edge. The golden afternoon light filtering through the ancient trees should have been beautiful, but instead it felt ominous, as if the woods were watching, waiting for darkness to fall. "Find anything useful?" Dominic's voice made her jump, despite having sensed his approach moments before he spoke. The strange awareness between them seemed to grow stronger by the hour. Jessica Chen wasn't a typical tourist. Luna saved her notes and closed her laptop. She'd been hiking these trails for 2 years, studying nocturnal bird behavior. She knew better than to take unnecessary risks. People with experience are often the most confident. Dominic settled onto the picnic bench beside her, close enough that his thigh brushed against hers. Sometimes that confidence leads them to make exceptions they wouldn't normally make. Like what? Like staying out past sunset to observe something unusual. Like following sounds that don't match their field guides. Like ignoring their instincts when those instincts are screaming at them to leave. Luna studied his profile as he gazed toward the tree line. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I am." His silver eyes met hers, and she saw shadows of old pain lurking in their depths. "I haven't always been careful enough to heed my own warnings." Before she could press for details, her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's the story coming? Need updates for the evening edition." Luna glanced at the screen, then at Dominic. "My editor wants an update." "What am I supposed to tell him? That you think something supernatural is hunting people in the Olympic Peninsula? Tell him you're still gathering information. Tell him the official search is ongoing and you're documenting the human interest angle." Dominic's voice held a note of command that made her bristle even as part of her wanted to obey. "Don't mention anything about the backpack or the unusual aspects of the case." "You mean don't mention anything that would actually inform the public about the danger they're walking into?" "I mean don't give them information that will get more people killed." His hand covered hers where it rested on the table. "Luna, there are things in these mountains that most people aren't equipped to understand, let alone survive. Knowledge without context is dangerous. And who decides what context people deserve? You." Dominic's jaw tightened, and for a moment she glimpsed something wild flickering behind his controlled expression. "Right now, yes. Because the alternative is panic, amateur hunters with high-powered rifles, and a body count that makes Jessica Chen look like the beginning instead of the latest casualty." The conviction in his voice made her reconsider her automatic resistance. How many people are we really talking about? How many disappearances that haven't made it into official reports? 17 in the last 6 months. All within a 50-mile radius of where we're sitting right now. Luna's blood turned to ice. 17? The official count is only 5. The official count is what gets reported to local authorities. It doesn't include the hikers whose families assumed they went off-grid by choice, or the ones whose cars were found at different trailheads, or the ones who were visiting from out of state and whose disappearances didn't get connected to the pattern. Jesus. Luna pulled out her phone and started typing. I have to. Dominic's hand closed over her phone, gently but firmly preventing her from continuing. You have to think about consequences. What happens when 17 families descend on this area looking for answers? What happens when the story goes viral and amateur investigators start streaming these mountains with cameras and conspiracy theories? What happens when more people disappear because no one warned them? Warning them about what, exactly? To avoid the woods at night? That's already standard hiking safety advice. To beware of large predators? Also standard. The people who are disappearing aren't ignoring basic precautions, they're encountering something that basic precautions can't protect against. Luna stared at him, pieces of impossible puzzle beginning to form in her mind. You know what's killing them. I know what kind of thing is killing them. What kind? Dominic was quiet for so long that Luna began to think he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The kind that used to be human. Before Luna could process the implications of that statement, shouts erupted from across the camp. Someone was running toward them from the direction of the command tent, waving frantically. They found something, the volunteer called out. Fresh tracks leading toward Devil's Canyon. Devil's Canyon. Luna had seen it marked on the topographical maps, a narrow gorge that cut deep into the mountain, accessible only by a treacherous trail that even experienced climbers avoided after dark. The camp transformed into controlled chaos as search teams prepared for an evening sweep of the canyon approaches. Luna grabbed her equipment, adrenaline overriding the fear that had been building all afternoon. Where do you think you're going? Dominic's hand closed around her arm. With the search teams. This could be the break in the story. Absolutely not. The alpha command in his voice made her spine straighten in automatic response before her independent nature reasserted itself. You don't get to decide where I go or what stories I cover. I get to decide whether I let you walk into a death trap. His grip tightened, not enough to hurt but enough to make his point. Luna, Devil's Canyon is a box canyon with only one way in or out. If something cornered you in there, I won't be alone. There will be a dozen search team members with radios and emergency equipment. Search team members who have no idea what they're really looking for. Dominic's eyes had gone metallic, reflecting the camp's emergency lighting in a way that seemed almost inhuman. Search team members who think they're tracking an injured hiker instead of something that could kill all of them without breaking a sweat. Luna tried to pull free, but his grip was immovable. Around them, the search teams were loading into vehicles, preparing to head for the canyon trailhead. She could see her story, potentially the story that would make her career, driving away without her. Let me go, Dominic. I can't do that. Can't or won't? Both. His voice carried a note of finality that made her want to scream with frustration. Luna, I swore I would keep you safe. I'm not breaking that promise because you're too stubborn to recognize the danger you're in. You swore to whom? When did you make any promises about me? Dominic's face went carefully blank, as if he'd revealed more than he intended. That's not important right now. Everything about this conversation suggests it's very important. Luna stopped struggling against his grip and focused on his face instead. Who are you really, Dominic? Because I'm starting to think CEO of a security company is just your cover story. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it. Because right now you're acting like you know me better than I know myself, like you have some kind of prior claim on my safety, and like you understand exactly what's happening in these woods while everyone else is stumbling around in the dark. The last of the search vehicles disappeared down the access road, their tail lights swallowed by the growing dusk. Luna watched her story drive away and felt something inside her chest crack with disappointment. I'm sorry, Dominic said quietly. I know this matters to you. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more interested in controlling me than understanding what I need. Luna finally yanked her arm free, rubbing the spots where his fingers had pressed. She could still feel the warmth of his touch, and that made her even angrier. I don't know what kind of relationship you think we have, but we met yesterday. You don't get to make decisions about my life based on one coffee shop conversation. Dominic flinched as if she'd struck him. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm handling this badly. Handling what badly? Protecting you without explaining why you need protection. He ran a hand through his dark hair, disrupting the perfect styling and making him look more human, more vulnerable. Luna, there are things about yourself that you don't remember. Things about your family, your heritage, your connection to these mountains. And there are people, things, that will kill to keep those memories buried. Luna's anger wavered in the face of his obvious distress. What kind of things? The kind that killed your parents. The words hit her like a physical blow, driving the breath from her lungs. My parents died in a car accident. Your parents died protecting you from something that wanted to take you. Dominic's silver eyes held hers steadily, as if willing her to see the truth. The car accident was staged to hide what really happened that night. Luna sank onto the picnic bench, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. That's impossible. Is it? You've been having dreams about these woods your entire life. You feel things that other people don't feel, sense things that don't show up on any normal radar. And when you look at me, you feel something that goes deeper than attraction, don't you? Something that recognizes me even though we supposedly just met. She wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right about all of it, the dreams, the strange sensitivities, the bone-deep recognition that had slammed into her the moment their eyes met across the coffee shop. What am I? She whispered. You're something that was supposed to remain hidden. Something that certain parties will do anything to control or eliminate. A howl echoed from the direction of Devil's Canyon, long and haunting and unmistakably not entirely human. It was answered by another call, and then another, until the mountains rang with wild voices that seemed to carry messages in their wordless songs. Luna found herself on her feet without remembering standing, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and something else, something that felt almost like anticipation. They're calling, she said, the words emerging without conscious thought. Dominic went rigid. What did you say? They're calling. Luna turned toward the distant canyon, her enhanced senses picking up scents and sounds that shouldn't have been detectable at such a distance. Something's wrong. The search team, they're in danger. Luna. Dominic's voice was sharp with alarm. Look at me. She turned, and his face went pale. Your eyes. What about them? They're glowing gold. Chapter 4. Luna stumbled backward, her hands flying to her face as if she could hide the evidence of whatever was happening to her. That's impossible. In the human world, yes. Dominic moved toward her slowly, his hands raised in a gesture of calm reassurance. But you're not entirely human, Luna. You never have been. Stop. She backed away from him, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it echoing in her ears. Just stop with the cryptic warnings and impossible statements. If you know something about me, about what I am, then say it plainly. Another howl echoed from Devil's Canyon, closer this time and filled with urgency that made her skin prickle with awareness. Without conscious thought, Luna found herself moving toward the trailhead, drawn by something she couldn't name but couldn't resist. Luna, no. Dominic was beside her in 2 quick strides, his hand on her arm again. You can't go toward them. Not when you're starting to change. Change into what? She spun to face him, and his sharp intake of breath told her the golden glow in her eyes had intensified. What am I changing into, Dominic? Something beautiful and powerful and dangerous. His voice carried a mixture of awe and fear that made her chest tighten. Something that certain people have been searching for since the night your parents died. You're talking about werewolves. The words emerged flat and disbelieving. You're actually suggesting that I'm some kind of werewolf. Not some kind. A very specific kind. Dominic's expression grew grave. Luna, your mother was the last of the moon-touched, a bloodline of female werewolves who could command pack loyalty across territorial boundaries. She was supposed to unite the fractured packs of the Pacific Northwest, but she chose love over politics. She chose your father and went into hiding rather than accept an arranged mating. Luna laughed, but it came out strained and slightly hysterical. This is insane. My mother was a librarian. My father sold insurance. They were the most normal people in the world. They were normal people who happened to be werewolves living undercover in the human world. Dominic stepped closer, his voice gentling. Your father was a strong beta from a coastal pack, but he gave up everything to be with your mother. They thought they could hide forever, raise you in the human world where you'd never manifest your abilities. Then why am I? Luna gestured at her face, at the golden glow she could see reflected in Dominic's silver eyes. Because you're 22, and the moon-touched bloodline awakens during times of extreme stress, usually by the 23rd birthday. His expression darkened. Someone's been orchestrating events to trigger your awakening. The disappearances, the media coverage, bringing you back to the place where your parents died, none of this is coincidence. A scream echoed from the direction of Devil's Canyon, human and terrified and cut short with brutal efficiency. Luna's head snapped toward the sound, every instinct in her body demanding that she respond. The search team, she whispered. It's a trap. Dominic's grip on her arm tightened. They're using innocent people as bait to draw you out. Then we have to help them. We have to keep you away from whoever orchestrated this. But even as he spoke, Luna could see the conflict in his expression. The screams were affecting him too, calling to something protective and fierce that he was barely keeping under control. You're a werewolf too. It wasn't a question. The pieces were clicking into place with terrifying clarity. That's how you knew my name, how you knew about my dreams, how you found me at the coffee shop. You've been tracking me. Dominic's silence was answer enough. Who are you really? Luna demanded, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. And don't give me another evasive non-answer. I'm the alpha of the Cascade Pack, he said quietly. The pack that controls this territory. The pack that your mother was supposed to join through an arranged mating 23 years ago. Luna's world tilted. You were supposed to mate with my mother? No. His voice was rough with old pain. I was supposed to mate with you. The confession hung between them like a physical thing, heavy with implications that made Luna's head spin. That's why you were so angry when you saw me in the coffee shop. You weren't just recognizing your fated mate, you were recognizing the woman who was promised to you and then taken away. Your parents broke a treaty that had taken decades to negotiate. Their disappearance nearly sparked a war between the packs. Dominic's hands clenched at his sides. I've spent 15 years believing you were dead, trying to hold together alliances that depended on a union that would never happen. And now I'm back, conveniently awakening just as people start disappearing in your territory. Luna's journalist instincts kicked in, connecting dots with ruthless efficiency. How do I know you're not the one orchestrating this? How do I know this isn't all some elaborate scheme to finally claim your promised bride? Dominic's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. Because if I wanted to claim you, Luna Hartwell, I wouldn't need elaborate schemes. The mate bond between us is strong enough that you can feel it even in your mostly human state. If I used my full alpha influence, if I let my wolf call to yours, you'd come to me willingly. That's not an answer. It is, though you're too stubborn to see it. He stepped closer, and Luna caught his scent, pine and sage, and something wild that made her pulse quicken despite her anger. If I wanted a compliant mate who'd fulfill treaty obligations, I would never have let you grow up believing you were human. I would have claimed you the moment you turned 18, before your powers manifested, when you wouldn't have been strong enough to resist. Another scream echoed from Devil's Canyon, followed by gunshots that cracked through the evening air like whips. Luna flinched, her enhanced hearing picking up sounds of chaos and terror that made her wolf nature howl for action. They're dying, she said, torn between fury at Dominic's revelations and anguish over the innocent people being slaughtered while they argued. Yes, they are. Because someone wants you to feel responsible enough to rush into their trap. Dominic's voice carried grim certainty. Someone who knows exactly how to manipulate your protective instincts. Then who? If it's not you, who's behind this? Marcus Thorne. The name emerged like a curse. My half-brother, who should have inherited the alpha position but was passed over because of his instability. He's been building a rogue pack in the deep wilderness, collecting wolves who've been cast out from other territories. Luna's blood chilled. Marcus Thorne. My editor's name is Marcus Chen. Dominic went rigid. What did you say? My editor at the Seattle Times. Marcus Chen. He's the one who's been pushing me to investigate the disappearances, who insisted I come here today instead of tomorrow. Her voice rose with growing horror. Oh God, he's been manipulating me for months, hasn't he? Feeding me just enough information to keep me digging, making sure I'd be in the right place at the right time. Luna, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Dominic's voice carried the full weight of his alpha authority, compelling her attention. Marcus isn't just unstable, he's completely feral. He believes that if he can force your awakening and claim you as his mate, he'll gain enough power to challenge me for pack leadership. But I thought werewolves could only mate with their true mates. Fated mates, yes. But a moon-touched female can be claimed by any alpha strong enough to dominate her wolf. Dominic's jaw clenched with barely controlled rage. It would destroy you, rip your soul apart, but it would give him access to your power. The howling from the canyon suddenly stopped, leaving a silence that felt more ominous than the previous chaos. Luna strained her enhanced senses, trying to pick up any sign of life from the search team, but found only an unnatural quiet that made her skin crawl. They're all dead, aren't they? She whispered. Probably. Dominic's honesty was brutal but necessary. Which means Marcus is done using them as bait. He'll be coming for you directly now. Then we run. We get out of here and... There's nowhere to run, Luna. This is his territory now, and you're in the middle of your awakening. Every wolf within 100 miles can sense what you're becoming. Dominic moved closer, his presence both threatening and protective. There's only one way to keep you safe. Which is, you complete the bond with me. Willingly. Before Marcus can take that choice away from you. Luna stared at him, her newly awakened senses picking up the sincerity in his voice, the protective fury radiating from his powerful frame, and underneath it all, the mate bond that had been pulling at her since the moment their eyes first met. You want me to choose you because it's the lesser of two evils. I want you to choose me because it's what we both want, politics and prophecies and family obligations aside. Dominic's voice roughened with emotion. Luna, what do you feel when you look at me? Not what you think you should feel, not what logic tells you, but what your wolf knows in her bones. Luna closed her eyes, letting herself feel instead of think for the first time since this nightmare began. The mate bond hummed between them like electricity, stronger now that her awakening had begun. When she looked at Dominic, something inside her recognized him as home, as safety, as the other half of her soul that she'd been unconsciously searching for her entire life. But there was more than attraction and recognition. There was trust, earned by his protection even when she fought against it. There was respect for his honesty even when the truth was painful. And there was love, not the instant, inexplicable obsession of romance novels, but something deeper and more real that had been growing from the moment he'd walked into that coffee shop. I feel like I've been waiting for you my whole life without knowing what I was waiting for, she admitted. Then mate with me. Dominic stepped close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Because you trust me to protect you and respect you and love you the way you deserve to be loved. A new howl echoed through the mountains, different from the others, this one holding the commanding authority of an alpha calling his pack. Luna's wolf responded instinctively, wanting to submit to the power in that call, but her human mind rebelled against the compulsion. That's Marcus, Dominic said grimly. He's close. How long do we have? Minutes, maybe less. Dominic cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing over her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. Luna, I won't lie to you, if we complete the mate bond, there's no going back. You'll be tied to me and to the pack permanently. Your life as a human journalist is over. And if we don't? Then Marcus claims you by force, destroys your mind in the process, and uses your power to start a war that will devastate every pack on the West Coast. His silver eyes held hers steadily. I'm asking you to give up the life you planned for a life you never imagined. It's not fair, and I'm sorry. Luna thought about her apartment in Seattle, her career ambitions, her carefully planned human existence. Then she thought about the dreams that had haunted her for 15 years, the electric awareness that crackled under her skin, the sense of finally coming home when she looked into Dominic's eyes. Will you answer one question honestly? Always. Do you want me because of what I am, or because of who I am? Dominic smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it reached his eyes. I fell in love with a stubborn journalist who argued with me in a coffee shop and refused to be intimidated by someone twice her size. The fact that you're also the most powerful moon-touched female born in a century is just a bonus. Luna reached up and pulled his face down to hers. Then yes. I choose you. The kiss that followed was electric, sending shockwaves through every nerve ending as the mate bond snapped into perfect alignment. Luna felt Dominic's wolf calling to hers, felt her own wild nature rise to meet him with joy and recognition and absolute trust. Power flooded through her, not just her own awakening abilities, but strength drawn from Dominic's alpha nature, creating a feedback loop that made the air around them shimmer with energy. Luna's human consciousness expanded, making room for the wolf that had been sleeping inside her for 22 years. When they broke apart, Luna's eyes blazed with golden fire, and she could feel the change beginning in earnest. Her senses exploded outward, bringing her information about every living thing within miles. She could smell Marcus's rogue pack approaching from 3 directions, could hear their paws hitting the ground in perfect synchronization, could taste their hunger for violence on the night air. "How many?" Dominic asked, reading the knowledge in her expression. 8, including Marcus. "They'll be here in less than 5 minutes. Luna's voice carried new strength, new authority that made even Dominic's wolf pay attention. "But they're not expecting me to be fully awakened yet. Luna. I can fight, Dominic. I can protect myself and help you protect your territory." She stepped back from him, power crackling around her like visible lightning. "I won't be a liability you have to shield. I know. But you're also my mate now, which means your safety matters more to me than tactical advantage." Dominic's expression was pained but resolute. "If something happens to you, nothing will happen to me. We're stronger together than either of us would be alone." Luna reached for his hands, feeling the power flow between them strengthen at the contact. That's what the moon-touched bloodline was bred for, isn't it? To create bonds that multiply strength instead of limiting it. Dominic nodded, his expression shifting from protective concern to something that looked like awe. "Yes. But it's been so long since the last awakening that I'd forgotten what it would feel like." A branch snapped in the forest nearby, too close and too deliberate to be accidental. Luna's newly sharpened hearing picked up the whisper of paws on pine needles, the low rumble of wolves communicating in frequencies just below human perception. "They're here," she said. Chapter 5. Marcus Thorne stepped into the clearing like something out of Luna's worst nightmares. Where Dominic carried himself with controlled authority, Marcus radiated barely leashed violence that made the air itself feel dangerous. His dark hair was longer and unkempt, his clothes tactical gear that had seen too much use, and his eyes held a wildness that spoke of a man who'd spent too much time letting his wolf nature dominate his human mind. Behind him, 7 other wolves emerged from the treeline in human form, but Luna's awakened senses could see their beasts just beneath the surface, ready to shift at the first sign of aggression. "Hello, little brother." Marcus's voice carried the same deep timbre as Dominic's, but where Dominic's held warmth beneath the authority, Marcus sounded like winter whined through dead trees. "Still playing protector, I see." "Marcus." Dominic shifted slightly, positioning himself between Luna and the approaching threat. "You're trespassing on Cascade Pack territory." "Am I?" "Because according to Pack law, this territory belongs to whoever's strong enough to hold it." Marcus's gaze shifted to Luna, and she felt his wolf trying to assess her power, to find weaknesses he could exploit. "And judging by the recent disappearances, you haven't been doing a very good job of protecting what's yours." "The disappearances were your doing. A necessary recruitment strategy. Humans make such useful bait, and their deaths serve as excellent motivation." Marcus smiled, showing teeth that were just slightly too sharp. "Speaking of motivation, thank you for finally awakening our sleeping beauty here. I was beginning to wonder if I'd have to kill a few more search teams to get her attention." Luna stepped out from behind Dominic, her newly awakened power making the air around her shimmer with barely visible energy. "You killed those people for nothing. I would never mate with someone who murders innocents." "Oh, my dear girl." Marcus's laugh was genuinely amused. "You think you have a choice in the matter? How refreshingly naive. She's already made her choice." Dominic's voice carried a warning that made Marcus's pack members tense for violence. "The mate bond is complete. Marcus went very still, his nostrils flaring as he tested the air. Luna could see the moment he detected the change in their scents, the way their individual pheromone signatures had begun to blend and strengthen. Impossible, he snarled. She's barely begun her awakening. A newly manifested moon touched couldn't complete a full bond without, he stopped, his expression shifting to something like admiration. Unless her power is even greater than the legends suggested. My power is greater than you can handle, Luna said, surprised by the confidence in her own voice. Which is why you tried to manipulate me instead of approaching me directly. Manipulation? My dear Luna, I prefer to think of it as courtship by proxy. Marcus began to circle them, his pack moving to flank their position. After all, I've been orchestrating your entire adult life. The rejection letters that kept you desperate for a big story, the editor position that gave me direct access to your investigations, even the timing of your return to these mountains, all carefully calculated to awaken the wolf inside you. Luna's stomach dropped as the full scope of his manipulation became clear. You've been controlling my career for years. Not controlling, guiding. Ensuring that when the time came, you'd be exactly where I needed you to be, with exactly the motivation required to trigger your transformation. Marcus's smile was poisonous with satisfaction. I must say, watching you chase your own tail investigating disappearances that I orchestrated was particularly entertaining. You're insane, Luna breathed. I'm thorough. There's a difference. Marcus stopped circling and faced them directly, his pack arranging themselves in attack formation. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to reject your hasty bond with my dear brother, and you're going to submit to me willingly. In exchange, I'll make his death quick instead of lingering. And if I refuse? Then I kill him slowly while you watch, break your mind with grief, and claim you anyway. Marcus's expression was matter of fact, as if he were discussing dinner plans rather than torture and murder. Either way, you become my mate. The only variable is how much pain everyone experiences in the process. Luna felt Dominic tense beside her, felt his wolf preparing for a fight that would likely cost him his life. Marcus's pack outnumbered them 4-1, and while Dominic was a powerful alpha, even he couldn't survive those odds. But Luna wasn't the helpless human she'd been 24 hours ago. There's a third option, she said, power beginning to build around her like a visible aurora. Which is? I challenge you for leadership of both packs. The words fell into absolute silence. Marcus stared at her as if she'd grown a second head, while behind him, his pack members exchanged uncertain glances. Even Dominic looked shocked. Luna, he said quietly, a leadership challenge has to be fought in wolf form, I know. Luna could feel the change building inside her, her human shape becoming unstable as her true nature demanded release. A newly awakened moon touched against a seasoned alpha. Poor odds for me, right Marcus? Marcus's eyes had gone calculating. You can't possibly think you're strong enough to. I think you're about to find out. Luna stepped away from Dominic, power crackling around her like lightning. Unless you're afraid to face me one-on-one? I'm not afraid of anything, little girl. Then prove it. Call off your pack and settle this the traditional way. Luna could feel the wolf inside her pressing against her human skin, demanding transformation. Winner takes both territories and all pack loyalty. Loser dies. Marcus studied her for a long moment, his expression cycling through disbelief, calculation, and finally, predatory hunger. You realize that even if by some miracle you defeat me, pack law will never accept a female alpha? Pack law will accept whoever's strong enough to enforce it. Luna's voice carried harmonics that made every wolf in the clearing flinch with involuntary submission. And I'm done letting other people decide what I can and cannot be. Luna, no. Dominic grabbed her arm, his face tight with fear. A leadership challenge is a fight to the death. If you lose, then you'll be free to rebuild without the burden of an unwanted mate bond. Luna covered his hand with hers, drawing strength from the connection between them. But I won't lose, Dominic. I can't. Too many people have died because of his manipulations, and too many more will die if I don't stop him here. She's right, Marcus said, his voice filled with something like excitement. This ends tonight, one way or another. He gestured to his pack, and they reluctantly moved back to the edge of the clearing. Very well, Little Moon touched. Let's see what 15 years of hiding in the human world has done to your wolf. Marcus began to shift immediately, his human form dissolving into something larger and more predatory. His wolf was massive, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, with silver-streaked fur and eyes that burned with intelligent malice. He settled into a fighting crouch, muscles coiled for the attack that would end the challenge before Luna could fully transform. But Luna was already changing. The shift hit her like a force of nature, tearing through her human shape with power that made the air itself sing. Her wolf was pure moonlight and shadow, silver-white fur that seemed to glow with inner fire and eyes like molten gold. She was smaller than Marcus but built for speed and agility rather than brute force. More importantly, she carried the accumulated power of every moon-touched female who had come before her, their strength flowing through the bloodline to manifest in this moment of ultimate need. Marcus lunged, jaws aimed for her throat in a killing bite that would have ended any normal wolf. But Luna was far from normal. She twisted away from his attack with liquid grace, her movements too fast for human eyes to follow. The battle that followed was less a fight than a dance of predators, each testing the other's speed and strength while looking for the opening that would decide everything. Marcus had experience and size, but Luna had power that went beyond the physical. She had the authority of her bloodline, the strength of her mate bond with Dominic, and the righteous fury of someone who had finally learned the truth about her parents' deaths. Marcus struck again, this time connecting with her shoulder and sending her tumbling across the clearing. Luna rolled to her feet, silver fur now stained with red, but the injury only seemed to fuel her rage. She howled, and the sound carried such authority that every wolf in the clearing, including Marcus, dropped to their bellies in involuntary submission. In that moment of enforced reverence, Luna attacked. She was on Marcus before he could recover from the compulsion, her jaws closing around his throat with the precision of a born predator. But instead of delivering the killing bite immediately, she held him there, demonstrating her dominance while giving him a chance to submit. Marcus struggled for several seconds before going still, acknowledging his defeat in the traditional manner. Luna held the position a moment longer, then released him and stepped back. The challenge was over. She had won. But as Marcus shifted back to human form, his expression held none of the acceptance that should have followed a formal defeat. Instead, he looked pleased, as if events were still going according to his plan. "Well done," he said, wiping blood from his throat. "I couldn't have asked for a better demonstration of your power." Luna shifted back to human form as well, her enhanced senses picking up movement in the forest around them. Too much movement. Too many heartbeats that hadn't been there when the challenge began. "You brought reinforcements," she said, understanding flooding through her with sick certainty. "Of course I did. Did you really think I'd risk everything on a simple challenge fight?" Marcus smiled as dozens of wolves emerged from the treeline, not just his original pack, but rogues and outcasts from territories across the Pacific Northwest. "I needed to see your full power before making." "Of course I did. Did you really think I'd risk everything on a simple challenge fight?" Marcus smiled as dozens of wolves emerged from the treeline, not just his original pack, but rogues and outcasts from territories across the Pacific Northwest. I needed to see your full power before making my real move. And now that I've confirmed you're everything the legends promised. The new arrivals surrounded the clearing, cutting off all escape routes. Luna counted at least 30 wolves in human form, with more arriving every moment. Even her awakened power couldn't overcome those numbers. You cheated, Dominic snarled, his own shift beginning as he prepared for a final stand. I improvised, Marcus corrected. Pack law says nothing about what happens after a leadership challenge is concluded. And right now, my dear brother, you and your new mate are vastly outnumbered. Luna felt despair threatened to overwhelm her. She'd played right into Marcus's hands, demonstrating her abilities so he could better plan her capture. Now Dominic would die because of her arrogance, and Marcus would get everything he'd wanted from the beginning. But as darkness closed in around them, Luna heard something that made her heart leap with sudden hope, the howl of approaching wolves, distant but growing closer. A lot of wolves, moving fast and with clear purpose. You're not the only one who can call reinforcements, Dominic said, his voice carrying grim satisfaction. The moment Luna's power manifested fully, every allied pack within 300 miles felt it. They're coming to witness the awakening of a new moon touched, and to ensure her protection. Marcus's confident expression wavered as more howls echoed through the mountains, answered by calls from different directions. The sound of an entire nation of wolves converging on their location. Impossible, Marcus breathed. The packs haven't united like that in over a century. They haven't had a moon touch to unite them, Luna said, understanding her true purpose for the first time. That's what this bloodline was really for, isn't it? Not just to create powerful individuals, but to bring the packs together when they faced extinction. The first of the allied wolves burst into the clearing, massive shapes that resolved into the human forms of alphas and their elite guards. Luna recognized some of them from Dominic's memories, accessed through their mate bond. The coastal pack, the mountain pack, the urban pack that controlled Seattle's supernatural underground. Within minutes, Marcus's rogues found themselves outnumbered 3-1 by wolves whose loyalty ran deeper than fear or personal ambition. Stand down, commanded a voice that carried absolute authority. The speaker was a woman in her 50s, silver-haired and regal, who moved through the crowd of wolves like a queen among her subjects. Marcus Thorne, you stand accused of violating pack law, murdering innocents, and attempting to claim a moon-touched female by force. How do you answer these charges? Marcus looked around the clearing, taking in the dozens of hostile faces, the obvious unity of the assembled packs, and Luna's golden eyes that still blazed with awakened power. I answer that the strong should rule, and the weak should submit, he said finally. Then you have chosen trial by combat, the silver-haired woman replied. But as the accused, you don't get to choose your opponent. She turned to Luna, inclining her head with deep respect. Moon touched, as the injured party, the choice of champion falls to you. Who will stand for justice in this matter? Luna looked at Dominic, saw the fierce protectiveness in his silver eyes, and knew exactly what she had to do. I'll fight my own battles, she said simply. Chapter 6. The second challenge began at dawn, with the first rays of sunlight filtering through the ancient trees to illuminate the sacred circle that had been hastily prepared by the assembled packs. Unlike the previous night's confrontation, this would be a formal trial by combat, bound by traditions that stretched back centuries. Luna stood at the eastern edge of the circle, no longer the confused human journalist who'd stumbled into a supernatural world. The events of the past 24 hours had burned away her old identity, leaving behind something stronger and infinitely more dangerous. Her awakened wolf pressed close to the surface, eager for the justice that had been denied for too long. Marcus waited at the western edge, his earlier confidence replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. Around the circle, representatives from a dozen different packs bore witness to what many considered the most significant trial in living memory. The accused stands charged with conspiracy, murder, and attempted forced bonding, announced Elena Riversong, the silver-haired alpha female who served as the supernatural community's unofficial high judge. Combat will continue until one participant yields or dies. Are both parties prepared? I am, Luna said, her voice carrying clearly across the circle. Marcus nodded grimly, his eyes never leaving her face. Then let justice be served. The transformation came easier this time, Luna's human shape melting away like morning mist to reveal the wolf beneath. But where last night's change had been driven by desperation and rage, this shift was controlled, purposeful. Her silver-white fur seemed to absorb the dawn light, making her appear almost ethereal as she faced her opponent. Marcus's wolf was still impressive, large and muscular, built for dealing devastating damage. But Luna could see the tells that marked him as unstable. The way his ears twitched constantly, the excessive panting despite the cool morning air, the restless shifting that suggested a mind pushed too far into wildness. They circled each other in the ancient pattern, each testing the other's reactions and looking for weaknesses. But this time, Luna wasn't fighting for territory or dominance. She was fighting for justice, for the innocent people Marcus had murdered, for the parents she'd never really known, and for the right to choose her own future. The power that flowed through her now was different from the raw strength she'd accessed during the leadership challenge. This was refined, focused, tempered by righteous purpose into something that made the very air shimmer with potential. Marcus struck first, lunging for her throat with desperate speed. But Luna had been expecting the attack, and she flowed aside like water, her counterstrike catching him along the ribs and opening furrows in his dark fur. They separated and circled again, Marcus now bleeding from multiple wounds while Luna remained untouched. Around the circle, the watching wolves maintained perfect silence, but she could feel their attention like a physical force. "You're faster than I expected," Marcus panted, his words somehow audible despite his wolf form, a sign of the mental instability that came from spending too much time shifted. "You're exactly as pathetic as I expected," Luna replied, her own voice carrying clearly through their mental connection. Marcus snarled and launched himself at her again, this time feinting toward her throat before switching to target her legs. It was a clever move that might have worked against a less experienced fighter, but Luna's awakened instincts guided her response perfectly. She leaped over his attack, twisted in mid-air, and came down with her jaws locked around the base of his neck. Not a killing bite, but a hold that demonstrated complete dominance. "Yield," she commanded, her mental voice carrying the full authority of her bloodline. For a moment, Marcus went completely still, and Luna thought he might actually submit. But then she felt his muscles bunch beneath her grip, and she realized he was preparing one final, desperate attack. He rolled suddenly, using his greater weight to break her hold and pin her beneath him. His jaws snapped toward her throat, death gleaming in his eyes. But Luna had felt the attack coming through their physical connection. She twisted just enough to avoid the killing bite, then struck upward with her hind legs, catching Marcus in the vulnerable spot just below his ribcage. The blow drove the air from his lungs and sent him tumbling away from her. Luna rolled to her feet, every instinct screaming at her to finish him while he was vulnerable. But as she approached his prone form, something made her pause. Marcus lay on his side, breathing labored, blood pooling beneath him from internal injuries. His wolf form was already beginning to flicker, the shift back to human shape beginning whether he willed it or not, a sure sign that he was dying. "Do it," he wheezed, his voice carrying pain and something that might have been relief. "Finish it." Luna patted closer, studying his face for any sign of deception. But what she saw there wasn't cunning or continued threat. It was exhaustion, pain, and the broken recognition of someone who had finally reached the end of a path that had been leading toward destruction for years. "Why?" she asked, her mental voice gentler than she'd intended. "Why did you do all of this? The murders, the manipulation, the attempt to force a bond, what did you hope to gain?" Marcus was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his words carried the weight of old wounds and older regrets. "I wanted to matter," he said simply. "I wanted to be strong enough, important enough, powerful enough that no one could ever dismiss me again. And when I learned about you, about what you represented, I thought if I could claim that power for myself, I could finally be the alpha I was supposed to be." "Power taken by force isn't real power," Luna said. "It's just violence wearing a crown." "I know that now." Marcus closed his eyes, his breathing growing more shallow. "But knowing and accepting are different things. I've been running from that truth for so long that I forgot how to stop." Luna felt the watching pack's expectation like a weight on her shoulders. Traditional justice demanded Marcus's death. He had killed innocents, broken fundamental pack laws, and shown no remorse for his actions. But as she looked down at the broken wolf before her, she found herself thinking about mercy, about second chances, about the difference between justice and revenge. "I offer you a choice," she said finally. "Death, as pack law demands. Or exile, permanent banishment from all pack territories, with the understanding that if you ever again harm an innocent person, I will personally hunt you down and finish what we started here." Marcus's eyes opened, focusing on her with obvious surprise. "You would spare me?" "I would give you the chance to find redemption, if you're strong enough to take it." Luna stepped back, giving him space but remaining ready to strike if he proved treacherous. "But understand, this is not weakness or naivety. This is me choosing to be the kind of leader who creates justice, not just punishment." Marcus struggled to shift back to human form, the process obviously painful given his injuries. When the change was complete, he lay naked and bloodied on the forest floor, looking more broken than dangerous. "I accept exile," he said, his voice barely audible. "And I'm sorry. For your parents, for the people I killed, for what I tried to do to you." "I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it." "It doesn't change anything," Luna agreed, shifting back to human form herself. "But it's a beginning." Elena Riversong stepped into the circle, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the scene. "The trial is concluded. Marcus Thorne is hereby banished from all pack territories, his exile to begin immediately upon his recovery from injuries sustained in honorable combat." She turned to Luna, inclining her head with deep respect. "The moon touched has chosen mercy over vengeance. Let all present witness that our newest alpha rules with both strength and wisdom." The assembled wolves burst into howls of approval, their voices rising in a symphony that echoed through the mountains. Luna felt their acceptance, their loyalty, their willingness to follow her leadership, and for the first time since her awakening began, she felt truly at peace with who she was becoming. Dominic appeared at her side, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders and pulling her against his chest. She could feel his pride and love through their mate bond, along with his relief that the immediate danger had passed. "It's over," he said softly. "No," Luna corrected, looking around at the gathered alphas and their packs, at the unity she'd somehow managed to create from chaos. "It's just beginning." Chapter 7. 6 months later, Luna stood on the deck of the mountain cabin that had become her home, watching the sunset paint the Olympic Peninsula in shades of gold and crimson. The view stretched for miles in every direction, encompassing territory that now belonged to the unified Pacific Northwest Pack, the first confederation of werewolf clans to form in over 2 centuries. A lot had changed since that night in the forest. The missing persons cases had officially been attributed to a serial killer who died while resisting arrest. A story that satisfied the human authorities while protecting the supernatural community's secrets. The Timber Creek Lodge had become the unofficial capital of the new Pack Confederation, with representatives from various territories meeting regularly to coordinate protection efforts and resolve disputes. And Luna had discovered that being a moon-touched alpha involved a lot more paperwork than anyone had bothered to mention in the ancient prophecies. The Coastal Pack is reporting unusual shipping activity in their territory, Dominic said, emerging onto the deck with a stack of files and 2 cups of coffee. 3 vessels arrived last night that weren't on any official manifests. Smugglers? Luna accepted the coffee gratefully, breathing in the rich aroma that was almost as comforting as her mate's presence. More likely weapons dealers. There's been chatter on the supernatural underground networks about someone trying to arm human hunters with silver ammunition and enhanced tracking equipment. Dominic settled beside her on the porch swing, his free arm automatically curving around her shoulders. Elena thinks it might be connected to the anti-supernatural movement that's been gaining traction in some of the larger cities. Luna frowned, her enhanced senses picking up the tension in her mate's voice. How serious is the threat? Serious enough that 3 packs have reported hunters using equipment that shouldn't exist in the civilian market. Thermal imaging that can detect shifted wolves, scent suppressors that mask human presence from our noses, and silver core bullets that fragment on impact for maximum tissue damage. Someone with serious backing is trying to start a war. Luna set down her coffee cup, her mind already shifting into the analytical mode that had made her such an effective journalist. The question is whether it's humans who've learned too much about our world, or supernatural factions trying to destabilize the Confederation. My money's on supernatural. Humans might stumble across evidence of our existence, but they wouldn't know enough about pack dynamics to target specific territories with this kind of precision. Dominic pulled her closer, his warmth chasing away the evening chill. Which means we're dealing with someone who understands exactly how to hurt us. Before Luna could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles broke the mountain silence. 2 black SUVs wound up the narrow access road, their headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. Expecting company? Dominic asked, already rising to his feet. No, but that's Elena's convoy. Luna recognized the vehicles from the monthly pack council meetings. She wouldn't come up here unannounced unless something was wrong. They watched as the SUVs pulled into the circular drive, disgorging Elena Riversong and several of her senior advisors. Even from a distance, Luna could see the urgency in their movements, the way they scanned the tree line as if expecting an attack. Luna, Dominic. Elena's voice carried clearly across the yard as she approached the cabin. We need to talk. Now. What's happened? Luna asked, her alpha instincts already responding to the crisis energy radiating from the older woman. Marcus Thorne is dead. The words hit Luna like a physical blow. Despite everything he'd done, despite the exile and the threat he'd represented, Marcus had still been pack, still been family in the complicated way that supernatural bonds created. How? Dominic's voice was carefully neutral, but Luna could feel his emotional turmoil through their mate bond. Hunters found his body 3 days ago in Oregon wilderness. He'd been shot with silver bullets, but that's not what killed him. Elena's expression was grim. He was tortured first. Someone wanted information from him, and they were willing to take their time getting it. What kind of information? Luna's journalistic instincts were kicking in, pushing personal feelings aside in favor of facts that might keep her people safe. Everything he knew about pack territories, leadership structures, and most importantly, about you. Elena climbed the porch steps, her aging joints moving with the careful grace of someone who'd learned to compensate for old injuries. We found evidence at the scene. Maps with pack locations marked, photographs of key alphas, and detailed notes about moon-touched abilities and weaknesses. Someone's building a target list, Dominic said grimly. More than that. Someone's building a comprehensive strategy for taking down the Confederation systematically. Elena accepted the chair Luna offered, settling into it with obvious relief. Marcus might have been a bastard, but he died protecting information that could have gotten all of us killed. His torturers didn't get everything they wanted. Luna felt a complex mixture of emotions, grief for a life lost, guilt over the mercy she'd shown, and a growing anger at whoever had turned Marcus's exile into a death sentence. Do we know who's responsible? We have theories. The torture methods matched techniques used by a group called the Silver Dawn, humans who've dedicated their lives to hunting supernatural creatures. But they've never operated on this scale before, and they've never shown this level of organization or resources. Someone's backing them, Luna said with certainty. Funding them, training them, providing them with intelligence about our world. The question is who? And why now, Dominic added. The Confederation has been careful to avoid human attention. We've maintained the balance, kept our existence secret, stayed out of human affairs except when absolutely necessary. Elena was quiet for a moment, her weathered face thoughtful. There's something else. Something that might explain the timing. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a manila folder. We've been monitoring human government communications, looking for any signs that official agencies might be aware of our existence. She opened the folder and handed Luna a stack of photographs. The images showed what appeared to be a government facility, concrete buildings surrounded by high fences and guard towers, with vehicles bearing federal license plates parked in neat rows. What is this place? Department of Supernatural Affairs. A Black Ops division that officially doesn't exist but has been operating out of this facility in Nevada for the past 18 months. Elena's voice carried the weight of someone delivering terrible news. They've been collecting evidence of supernatural activity, building files on known pack territories, and developing what they call containment protocols. Luna studied the photographs more carefully, noting details that made her blood run cold. Armed guards with weapons that looked far more advanced than standard military issue. Buildings designed more like laboratories than administrative offices. And in one image, vehicles that looked suspiciously like the ones Dominic had described being used by the enhanced hunters. They're not just studying us, she said slowly. They're preparing to move against us. It gets worse. Elena pulled out another set of documents. We managed to intercept some of their communications. They know about you specifically, Luna. They know about the Awakening, about the Confederation, about your role in uniting the packs. And they see me as a threat that needs to be eliminated. They see you as the keystone that holds everything together. Remove you, and they believe the Confederation will collapse into territorial warfare, making individual packs easier to contain or eliminate. Dominic's hand found Luna's, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture of support that steadied her racing heart. What's their timeline? Unknown, but probably soon. Intelligence suggests they're in the final stages of what they're calling Operation Silver Moon. Elena's expression grew even more grave. They're planning coordinated strikes on multiple pack territories, with the ultimate goal of capturing or killing every major alpha on the West Coast. Including us. Especially you. Luna stood and walked to the porch railing, looking out over the wilderness that had become her domain. Thousands of square miles of forest and mountain where her people lived free, following ancient patterns that connected them to the land in ways humans couldn't understand. All of it under threat from people who saw them as monsters to be contained or destroyed. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Days, maybe a week at most. Our sources suggest they're moving assets into position for a major operation." Luna thought about the reports Dominic had been sharing, the unusual shipping activity, the enhanced hunters, the precision targeting of specific pack territories. It was all part of a larger plan, carefully orchestrated to catch the supernatural community off guard. But there was something the government planners hadn't counted on. Something that Marcus, despite his flaws, had understood perfectly. Luna wasn't just another alpha to be eliminated. She was the moon-touched, the bloodline that had been bred specifically to unite fractured packs in times of existential threat. And right now, her people faced the greatest threat in their recorded history. "Send word to all allied packs," she said, her voice carrying the authority that had made alphas twice her age bow their heads in respect. "Full mobilization. Every wolf, every territory, every resource we have access to." "Luna," Elena said carefully, "if we mobilize on that scale, there's no hiding our existence anymore. The human world will know about us. The human world already knows about us. The only question is whether we face this threat as scattered, vulnerable packs, or as the united nation we were always meant to be." Luna turned back to face the assembled advisors, her golden eyes blazing with the power of her awakened heritage. "For too long, we've hidden in the shadows, hoping humans would never notice us, never threaten us. But they have noticed, and they are threatening us, and hiding isn't going to save anyone." "You're talking about war," Dominic said quietly. "I'm talking about survival. And if that means revealing ourselves to the human world, if it means fighting for our right to exist, then that's what we'll do." Luna's voice carried across the mountain air, echoing with the authority of every moon-touched female who had come before her. "Send the call. It's time for our people to come home." As Elena began making phone calls and her advisors dispersed to carry word to the various packs, Luna remained on the porch with Dominic, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. "Are you ready for this?" he asked softly. "I don't think anyone's ever ready for war," Luna replied. "But I'm ready to protect our people, whatever it takes. Even if it means giving up any chance at a normal life?" Luna thought about the quiet moments they'd shared over the past 6 months. Mornings spent drinking coffee and discussing pack business, evenings curled up together while she caught up on reports and correspondence, nights when they could simply be mates without the weight of leadership pressing down on them. All of that was about to change. Once the mobilization began, once the supernatural world stepped out of the shadows, there would be no going back to simple happiness. "Our life was never going to be normal," she said finally. "The moment I awakened, the moment we completed the mate bond, we accepted that our responsibilities would be greater than our personal desires." "No regrets?" Luna looked at the man who had become her anchor in a world gone mad, the alpha who had chosen to stand beside her rather than in front of her, the mate who had helped her find strength she didn't know she possessed. "Only that it took so long for me to find you." Dominic pulled her into his arms, and for a moment they simply held each other, drawing comfort from the connection that transcended the physical world. Tomorrow would bring war councils and strategic planning and the terrible mathematics of survival. But tonight they had this, the peace that came from being exactly where they belonged, with exactly the person they were meant to be with. In the distance, wolves began to howl, first one, then dozens, then hundreds as the call spread across the mountains. It was the sound of a nation awakening, of ancient bloodlines remembering their purpose, of predators preparing to defend their territory against an enemy that had underestimated exactly what they were dealing with. The war for supernatural freedom was about to begin. And Luna Hartwell, once a struggling journalist searching for her first big story, now stood ready to lead her people into a battle that would determine the fate of both the human and supernatural worlds. The moon touched had awakened, and she would not go gentle into that dark night. 1 year later, Luna stood before the United Nations General Assembly, the first supernatural representative ever to address the international community in an official capacity. The past year had been a whirlwind of revelations, negotiations, and careful diplomacy as the world adjusted to the reality of non-human citizens living among them. The war with the Department of Supernatural Affairs had lasted only 3 weeks. When faced with the coordinated response of every supernatural community on the continent, when confronted with the reality of what they were actually dealing with, most government officials had quickly decided that negotiation was preferable to conflict. There had been casualties on both sides, moments when Luna feared that peaceful coexistence would prove impossible. But in the end, the same forces that had awakened her heritage, love, protection, the determination to build rather than destroy, had prevailed. Now she served as the first supernatural ambassador to the United Nations, working to establish legal frameworks that protected both human and supernatural rights while maintaining the balance that kept both communities safe. It wasn't easy. There were still groups on both sides who preferred conflict to cooperation, who saw the other species as threats to be eliminated rather than neighbors to be understood. But progress was happening, one carefully negotiated treaty at a time. The supernatural community doesn't seek dominion over humanity, Luna said, her voice carrying clearly through the assembly hall. We seek partnership, recognition, the right to exist openly without fear of persecution or exploitation. In the gallery above, she could see Dominic watching with pride, their mate bond carrying his love and support across the distance between them. Beside him sat Elena Riversong, now serving as the first director of supernatural human relations, and other leaders who had helped build the confederation that had made their victory possible. Together, we can build a world where both our species thrive, Luna continued. Apart, we face a future of fear, suspicion, and endless conflict. The choice is ours to make. The applause that followed was tentative but real, marking another small step forward in the long journey toward true understanding. After the session ended, Luna found herself on the steps of the UN building, breathing in the crisp New York air while she waited for her security detail to organize their departure. Being a public figure in the supernatural community came with risks that required constant vigilance. How do you think it went? Dominic asked, appearing beside her with the silent grace that had first marked him as predator. Better than expected, not as well as I'd hoped, Luna replied honestly. We're still decades away from the kind of acceptance that would let supernatural children grow up without hiding what they are. But it's a beginning. The best victories usually are. Luna smiled, remembering the terrified human journalist who had stumbled into a coffee shop investigation that would change her life forever. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone from a different lifetime who had never known the weight of leadership or the joy of finding her true mate. Ready to go home? Dominic asked. Always. As their convoy wound through Manhattan traffic toward the airport, Luna reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. She'd started out looking for a story that would make her career, and instead found a destiny that would define her existence. But more than that, she'd found love, not just the mate bond that connected her to Dominic, but love for her people, her purpose, and the future they were all building together. The moon-touched bloodline had awakened not to rule, but to serve. Not to dominate, but to unite. And in that unity, both species had found a path towards something better than either could achieve alone. The flight home would take them back to the mountains of the Pacific Northwest, back to the territory where pack leaders from across the continent came to resolve disputes and plan for the future. Back to the life they'd built from the ashes of old hatred and ancient fears. It wasn't the life Luna had planned. It was better.